Okay, in this video we will be looking at our final discussion related to the creation of parts in SolidWorks, and that would be the idea of sketcher tools. So I'm going to blast through in maybe one ugly, totally meaningless sketch, or maybe in a few different sketches, a lot of the tools that are available in a sketcher. So let's start off by creating a sketch. I'll sketch on the front plane. It has rotated perpendicular, and I'm going to first create a rectangle on which to place lots of other things. And so now to make some of the potential design intent viable, I'm going to let's now explore the line tool, of which there are two types. A line, we've done quite a bit with that already this semester, a center line. And so I'm going to create a center line that extends from the left of the rectangle and is snapping to be level with the center of the coordinate system. And I'm going to force this line to snap level and hit escape. Now notice I get a couple of marks on this thing. This mark says this line is horizontal. This mark says that this point and that line are coincident. My rectangle, because I did a horizontal rectangle, said that line's horizontal, that line is vertical. So all of these little green marks, which we've created a few times but we haven't paid a lot of attention to, are in fact quite significant. This line will not allow me to move this corner point and make this line not vertical, or make this line not horizontal. And I also cannot grab this center line and attempt to move it so that it's not horizontal, and I can't even leave it horizontal and move it up and down because it's forced to go through that point. Those things most CAD programs call automatic snaps to create references or relations, but the relations have snapped into place as I created the geometry. And so I'm going to create another center line just in case I want it, and I'm going to let it snap to being right below the origin of the coordinate system. That's what that dotted blue line means. And I will allow it to snap to be vertical and coincident with the coordinate system point. So I've created a couple of center lines. We've already seen the line tool, and I can just go click on the line tool, click, 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 and then when I want to close that line, click. And I've just created a whole bunch of lines. And did I accidentally build in some constraints? And I did. Notice it says these two lines are parallel. If I didn't want that, I'd have been a little more careful when I created this shape and eliminated the parallel. But let me say I really didn't want that. I'll click on and I'll simply delete that constraint. And now when I attempt to drag this point, it is not forced to remain parallel. Okay, now while we're looking at this line, let's go ahead and look at some of the things we can do with constraints. Let's say I did in fact want this line, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to hold down Control and click on its companion, and I did in fact want those two lines to be parallel. Well, I will click on the word parallel here, and those two lines are now in fact parallel, and I get the parallel symbol back. What if I also wanted these two lines to be parallel? Let's click on that line, hold down Control, and I will then click on parallel. And those two lines are parallel, and no matter how I now drag the part, I cannot drag it in a way that makes these two not parallel and those two not parallel. Now I can change the angle of the lines, but they are still parallel to each other. Okay, let's see. What if I wanted the midpoint of this line to be forced to stay on that line? I will right click and select the midpoint of that line, and then I'm going to hold down Control and select my center line, and I'm now going to select coincident and accept that. And now this line, no matter what I do to it, do you see how it extends symmetrically? Okay, it must always keep its midpoint fixed to this line. Okay, we'll look at lots of the other constraints in a little while, and so I've probably done all that I know to say about lines, and what I'm going to do is do a drag over that region, selecting all of those lines, and only the things that I fully selected are highlighting. Try that again. I'm going to drag and select those blue lines, and I'm going to hit the delete key, and they're gone, but I didn't delete things that I only partially selected. Okay, let's play with the rectangle tool. We've already seen the normal form of the rectangle. There's a rectangle which is centered on a point, and so if I click on the center of my coordinate system, my rectangle is both horizontal, vertical, and centered. And so a different form of rectangle. I'm going to Control Z, which is an undo to get rid of that one. A three-corner rectangle is not necessarily horizontal and vertical. One corner, second corner, and third corner. Again, different kind of rectangle. Control Z, it's gone. A three-point center rectangle, you play with that one. A parallelogram, click, 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 and we form a parallelogram instead of our more standard rectangle. Control Z to get rid of it, and we've now looked at the rectangle tools. Let's look at the slot. We'll sort of work our way down. This thing is a straight slot. I will click on it, and I'll click one point, and I will click the other point, and I will now expand it on out, and I've created a horizontal slot. Control Z. Click on exactly the same tool, but I don't make my line horizontal. I make it slanted, and I get that form of the slot. Control Z to undo it. A center point straight slot. Let's see what that one looks like. I'll click on the center, and okay, the center and the ends, and then I'll sketch out to the radius, just a slightly different form of it. And that's what all of these are. A three-point arc slot. I've actually never done that, so we've got to try it, of course. A click, a click, and a click, and then a size. The 3 points create the arc, and then I drag the size to create the slot. Control Z to get rid of that. A standard circle where I select the center and pull out, and there's the circle. Control Z. What else do we have? A perimeter circle. Okay, 3 points can define a circle's perimeter. Let's do a circle that passes through there, and there, and there. Okay, now it also happened to pass through that one because of my rectangle appears, since it is a rectangle, but these 3 points created this circle, and this circle does in fact have a center somewhere. Actually, it has a center. It should be at the center of this rectangle, probably right there. Okay, Control Z to undo it. Let's just try that one again with arbitrary set of 3 points. No, I want that one. 1 point on the circle, another point on the circle, and one more point on the circle, and there's our 3-point circle. And I suppose if I want to edit it, let's see, does it show me the 3 points? It appears not to. I can now move it around, but it no longer actually shows me the 3 points. Okay, well that's fine, and I'm going to delete that circle. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, and it is gone. Arcs, we have a center point arc where we can select a center point, and I'm going to actually select the center of the coordinate system. Dragging out sets the radius, and then rotating lets me control how far the arc extends from the first point I clicked on to the second point that I click on. Let's do that one again. I'll create an arc. Let's center it here and go out 45 degrees and move on around to about another 45 degrees, and I've created that arc. Control Z to get rid of that one, Control Z to get rid of the other one. That is a center point arc. A tangent arc is an arc that's going to be tangent to an existing thing. And so I've selected it, and actually it would be better to have a helpful line sitting just about anywhere. Okay, and maybe even two of them. So there's a couple of lines, and if I click on tangent arc, and I'm going to first click on this endpoint, and my arc is always going to be tangent to that line, and then I can specify the curvature with a click, and let's see, now it's ready to go do another one. Okay, and so I specified the starting point and the thing it remains tangent to, the endpoint, and when I selected the endpoint, it set both the radius and therefore the center of this arc. I'm going to delete this one. Let's see what I can do with connecting these two. Tangent, tangent, and I can't easily be tangent to both. And so that one is done. I was tangent to one, and I was not tangent to the other. Now, what if I were willing to move that point and allow them to become tangent? Okay, well that's fine, and what I'm going to do is do it in an automated way by selecting the arc and selecting this line by holding down Control, and I'm going to select tangent, and I've now made the arc with a constraint to be tangent to this one, and you can see that tangent constraint here, and you can see the tangent constraint there. So I'll pop up these constraints every now and then as things go by. So I'm going to leave that one alone. What else do we have for arcs? We have a 3-point arc. And I'm going to simply go click, and we'll locate another point on the arc. And then the third point is the location of the center. And I'll click, and that's the 3-point arc. And I will Control Z out of that one. I'll leave that one hanging around. Although if I leave too much stuff on the screen, I get more snaps than I'm really interested in. A polygon, and I can go click a center and a distance, and it defaults to a 6-sided polygon. Let's go with a 5-solid polygon. We will accept that. Let's zoom to make things fit nicely. Or let's go with an 8-sided polygon. Okay, I will accept that one. And so there is my geometry. It does show the inscribed circle for the polygon. Let's grab it, and I can move it around. Let's see, can I change its overall size? I can only change the size easily if I can stop this thing from moving. And so I'm going to make this point and this point merge. They become the same thing. And now maybe this will tend to stay put as I drag. Nope, it's simply going to move things along around. So looks like I would really have to fix this thing before I could drag the size. So let's do that. I'm going to Smart Dimension that point and that point in the horizontal direction and keep it, and then that point and that point. Oops, let's try that again. Smart Dimension this point and that point, but now I want to go in the vertical direction, and I'll accept it. Okay, now that center point is fixed. It shouldn't move. I should be able to grab the size and move it and even rotate it. Okay, so it was unwilling to move as I wanted until I actually constrained that point. We will accept that. And to clean this thing up a bunch, I'm going to do some Control Z's and get rid of stuff, getting rid of those dimensions, and in fact get rid of the polygon eventually. That polygon is gone. Okay, here's where we need to spend a bit of time. A spline. Okay, this thing can generate splines, equation-driven curves, or fit splines. First of all, we're not going to play with this equation-driven curve. Let's play with the spline. And in its simplest form, a spline is a series of points that start off looking like a line, and all these snaps are occurring because I'm in the neighborhood of geometry, but I'll move over here. I've clicked my first point. I will click my second point. Still looks like a line, but as I drag away, now what it's wanting to do as I create my points is have those points, and I've clicked 4 points, is make a nice smooth curve that passes through all of the points where I clicked. Okay, this particular spline, if you look at it, just for reference, is called a natural spline, in that it is, and it's probably a cubic spline, and if we were to take a thin flexible beam and force it to pass through all of these points, this is almost certainly the shape that a thin flexible wire or beam would take, including approaching a straight line at this end and approaching a curvature of infinity, a radius of curvature of infinity, a curvature of 0, or it's approaching a very straight line at this end. Now, a spline is defined by multiple points that guide the spline, but if I click on this spline, it shows me that I have other guides. I can control, and by changing these other guides, I am bringing it away from what would be called the natural spline. And so one of the things I can do is grab the end of this arrow and change the starting direction for the spline at this point. I can change the final direction that the spline arrives at this point. I can change by dragging the arrow how strongly the curve asymptotically attaches itself to this vector. And I can do the same thing here. Let's go to an interesting spot here. I've made this curve, oops, I'm somehow let go at the wrong place. Let's try it again. Okay, I think it does not like making loops. I didn't know that. Let's strongly attach there. Do you see how, being long, it tries to come in very tightly asymptotic to this thing, where if I make this thing very short, it doesn't come in asymptotic at all until I get very close to the end. I can also grab these interior handles and change the tangent direction here. I think these tend to point in the same direction. I think there may be a way to break this connection, and which would put a discontinuity in the spline. Maybe not. I can increase how strongly it comes in tangent to that section on one side or the other. Okay, and so these handles on the spline control, oops, I got an error message from another program. I don't want that at all. So let's get back to SolidWorks. So I've been playing with these handles. Okay, I can independently grab the direction handle for the spline, or what is called either the tension or the weight value, depending on terminology you've used. That some people like to call it tension, some people like to call it weight. Either one is probably fine. Each one can be independently controlled. And now I'm going to play with a tool. I'm going to accept that spline, and then I don't have any dimensions on this thing. I want to look at the option under Display Delete Relations, an interesting place for it, fully define the sketch. Let's say I don't really know what dimensioning scheme I want. I'm going to click on fully define the sketch, and I want it to dimension all entities in the sketch, and I'm going to say calculate, and it comes up with a bunch of dimensions, and I'm going to accept it. And then what I'm going to do is expand some of these out because they are way too close together. But every point in this sketch is now defined, and they are all stacked together so much. I'm going to undo this in just a second, and maybe I did this on a part that had too many things, but every point that's is defined. There's one thing though that it appears that fully dimension the sketch does not do. It appears that it does not dimension these spline handles. So as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do at this point is Control A. No, let me hit Escape. Control A to select everything. I'm going to hit the delete key, and I now have nothing in my sketch. Let's create a spline. Starts at the origin, goes to there, and ends there. Let's just see what fully dimension does here. Fully define the sketch, all entities, calculate, and this is still a little on the messy side. Oh, it didn't keep my dimensions. I hit escape too soon. So fully dimension, calculate, and accept it. Now I can expand them out a little bit, try to make them look a little bit nicer. That probably looks a little nicer there. And so I've got 2 height dimensions and 2 width dimensions because that point passes through the origin. But if I look at this spline and click on it, my handles have not been dimensioned because they are still blue. I've changed them. If I want, I can smart dimension a handle. I can smart dimension the angle. Oops, that's not giving. Okay, let me click on that and this. Actually, no, I don't have a line to dimension the angle to. Need to do that first. Let's go create my center line, which I lost, through the origin and horizontal. Pardon the cough. Okay, I paused the video for a second, but I'm going to accept that center line, and that's all I want. And now with Smart Dimension, I ought to be able to dimension that angle as 39 degrees. Let's go with 40 degrees. And so I've set the tangency, or the tangency direction for this spline as 40 degrees. As a separate item to be smart dimensioned is the tension. And that just shows up as a number pointing to the point on the spline that matters. I'll change that to a 20 and accept it. And these dimensions are now black. If I smart dimension only the arrow and get a dimension of 35, the arrow is black, but this diamond which sets the direction has not been set, and so I would either need to choose something about the tangency of this vector or specify an angle. What I'm going to do is take this direction and this line, and I'm going to ask for perpendicular, and I'll accept it. And now this thing is black because it's fully defined by the perpendicular constraint. Where did all of my constraint markers go? And there aren't very many, but there should be at least one now. It's possible somehow they got turned off when I wasn't looking. Oh, there we are, sketch relations. I guess just none of them right now. Or, there we go. I don't know why they weren't showing earlier. I've got a coincident point between the end point of this spline and the origin. I've got a horizontal constraint for this line, and I've got a perpendicular constraint at the end of this spline perpendicular to that line. So I do have a few constraints. Okay, so that is a spline. play with it as you wish. Let me delete everything. And now I'm just going to create a few a line to play with. And so I have those points. And what I want to do is take the points that represent this line, and let's see what a fit spline looks like. And it's going to be fit, it basically says fit it to existing data. Oops, I didn't actually get that. It is snapping to these points, and therefore being fit to these points. Now, did it actually make, I guess, question is, did it actually use the fit spline? And how would that be different if I just done click, click, click? And the basic answer, I just snapped these to a series of existing points. I'm going to have to take a closer look myself. It's fit spline, and I'm going to do that in just a second. Actually, I'm going to pause, understand fit spline better, and come back. Okay, I paused for a moment to make sure I understood the fit spline a little bit better, and I knew this, I just forgot. Basically, a fit spline says, let's start with a geometry that exists, and then one command, fit a spline to that geometry. And what it did, because this is an open figure, is it fit not a perfect fillet or an arc of a circle, but it fit this pink spline to this angle, and these yellow rays are showing radius or curvature information, where a straight line has zero curvature, no curve to it, or might be said to have infinite radius of curvature. And what we see in this spline that was fit to it is the curvature is heading from very large, long yellow lines to basically heading towards zero, so that we're matching between the spline and the line that we're joining to. We are matching the position, the curve passes through this point. We are matching the slope, this line is tangent to the spline that's being created, and we're matching curvature because the curvature of this pink spline diminishes to zero. I'm going to accept this, and let's look at what it gives us. And it actually trims the lines, okay, and leaves behind spline segments and line segments. I'm going to undo this one, and let's look at a slightly different situation where I close in this figure, and then I will do select it all, and stop that, try it again, select it all, and do a fit spline. And I'm going to accept it, and then we'll look at it. And you can see that it has trimmed these lines and placed that spline. Now it has replaced all of these lines with, this is a segment of a spline, and it's a straight line segment, but a spline can do a straight line segment. There's a segment of a spline and straight line segments. And so the spline is done. Let's see, if I double click on it, there's really very little editing that I can do to this spline. So we will accept it as is. That's a fit spline. Let's take a look at ellipses. We have an ellipse, a partial ellipse, and a parabola. We'll try the ellipse first, and the ellipse would have a center point and a major radius and a minor radius. Okay, and if let's see, what do I get when I attempt to smart dimension this thing? What all will it give? Let's try that again. Smart dimension, the ellipse. Nothing is really coming out, so probably what I need to do is dimension there to there. I've done too many clicks now. Smart dimension there to there, and that would be dimensioning the minor and then I could smart dimension there to there. That's not the way I wanted it, actually. Okay, I didn't actually get the dimension I wanted. One more time, smart dimension. I didn't accept the dimension in time. Okay, that dimension. Accept it. Fine, I'm done with it. Now let me dimension here to there. Don't understand. There. I'm clicking something wrong. Still don't understand. It should let me dimension that. Smart dimension from center to major. Not giving it to me. I'm about to abandon this. Okay, I paused the video and just practiced a little bit, and I have no clue why it's working now, but if I click on smart dimension and I click on that point and on that point, and now it either lets me dimension a horizontal dimension, a vertical dimension, or the dimension along the axis of the ellipse. I'm going to create that one and accept it. Once I've created it, I can drag it out a little bit further. I don't know why that dimensioning was so hard for me at first, but there we go. So, ellipses. We can do a partial ellipse. Let's finish this one first. And a partial ellipse. Never done this in my life. Let's say, here we go. One more time. Partial ellipse. We'll start there. Drag it out. Size it. And decide how much of it I want to keep by moving on around. So several points are created. A center point, a starting point, ending point, etc. Let's control Z to undo that one. Frankly, I'm going to get rid of everything. Delete. Okay, let's see. Putting text into a sketch. Oh, let's play with it. Text would probably follow a curve. Hello, world. And probably without a curve, we're not going to get this text. So we're going to select a very simple curve, which is a straight line. We'll accept that. Straight line. Now we'll go with text. Our curve is the straight line. Hello, world. And we will accept it. Didn't get it. Okay, I paused for a moment to see what was going on, and here's what was going on. I was getting these various texts that I was trying to create, but it's just showing up so small because my picture is so big. And my picture, let's get a sense of the size by smart dimensioning this line, and that's 57 inches long. Okay, so that's very close to 6 feet long. And so I would expect text of standard size to end up being very small. Let's select this text. I'll double click on it. And we can certainly make it bigger by not using the standard document font and clicking on the font button. And let's go to a size where the unit for each letter is maybe 5 inches. Let's see what that looks like. And now let's accept it and zoom on out. And so I made one copy of the text that I had created earlier, quite a bit bigger. I've still got other copies of text. I'm going to zoom in and delete, and now see that that corner is clean and I've got text created. I'm going to delete that curve, and actually if this sketch had been placed on another surface, I could extrude this into a surface and actually make an interesting cut. And so, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. Let's go ahead and exit the sketch, getting tired of it anyway. And I'm going to sketch on the front plane, a rectangular block. Okay, we're going to make it not too big. and I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to extrude it, and we'll pull that out a little bit. Then I'm going to use that block to engrave some text on it. And so what I'm going to do is another sketch on that surface, and I will view perpendicular, and I'm going to create a center line just to use as a reference that will start here and end there. And on that center line with it selected, I'm going to place some text, and we'll say hello world. Oops, I hit the return key, didn't mean to. Space. Okay, and I'm actually going to go make it a bit bigger by selecting, well, let's make the font, no, we'll actually select the font, and let's go to 0.137. Let's make it a size 3. I think that'll, no, not what I intended at all. I've intended a 0.3. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll accept the text, and I will accept the sketch, and with that sketch I'm going to do an extrude cut, and I will go into the part. Well, if we do a through all just for fun, we should see a cut all the way through the part, but it's going to make a whole bunch of independent bodies. Yeah, I'll keep them all for now. And so we have done a cut all the way through the part. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go edit that and change it to a not through all. Let's just go blind and a small depth that goes into the part just a little bit, and we will accept that. And that will actually get rid of those several bodies. And so I think if you look carefully, you can see that we have extruded into that part with the text, and I'm going to eliminate that by deleting it. Yes, I will. And let's get rid of the sketch as well, and let's go edit the sketch that we're in here and view perpendicular to that sketch. Let's expand it. Oops, that sketch is not, okay. We'll go here, view perpendicular. There we are. And let's see, where are we going? Where have we been? We've done that. Creating a point, for whatever reason I might want a point. I'll click on that, and I'll place a point right there. Same location as an existing point. Okay, so I'm just going to create a point and put it right here. And I'm going to say I like it there, and certainly I could then smart dimension that point from here to that edge and accept it, and smart dimension that point from here to the vertical and accept that. And then later on, if I wish, I can use that point for doing other things, such as starting a spline at a specific point, and that's all I'll do with that spline. And then if I wish to change the dimensions, I can change the location of the starting point of that spline. Can do lots of things with points. I'm not going to show any more with that. Let's get into trim entities, and to do that I need a few other things. So I'm going to create a circle that intersects right there. So I've created a circle, and I'm going to create a few other lines that go from here to there to there. And now let's take a look at what trim entities will do. There's either trim entities or extend entities. Trim entities will let me drag a line, and you can see that line following my cursor anywhere I want, and anytime I bump into something with that line, it will trim whatever. So I'm going to start inside the circle and intersect that line, and I've gotten rid of it. I'm going to start in here and intersect this part of the circle that I'm approaching, and it'll disappear. Bang, that arc disappeared. And then if I wish, I can start in here and get rid of that segment of line, or I could get rid of that segment of line. Let me get rid of that segment of line, and let me get rid of that segment, and let me get rid of that segment, and I will get rid of that segment. Okay, and so that's the trim, and whatever I cross gets trimmed. Now that spline was the entire thing, so it trimmed the entire spline. That's the trim entities. Okay, let's take a look at the extend entities briefly. Extend entities will take an entity that can be extended and extend it up to the next thing. So if I point to that line, I can see where it would get extended. If I point to that line, I can see where it would get extended. So let me extend that line to the next thing it would hit. Now I'll get different behavior out of this one when I extend it to the next thing it would hit, and then extend that to the next thing it would hit. Okay, and then I can extend this one to the next thing it would hit, or the next, or zooming in, the next, but I'm not going to. You get the idea of extending entities. Next thing we're going to look at is convert entities, but I would like to do that by having an extruded device and a formed by a good sketch. So I'm going to go trim up a whole bunch of things very quickly. And I'm going to select those and delete them, and I'm going to delete that line segment, and that segment of arc I'll delete with a trim. Okay, and I'll do another thing. I'm going to create a circle centered at the point that I created. On the point that I created, and we will call that the circle that I want. Escape, and I will take my sketch. I may already have an extrude out there, and I do. It looks like I'm starting something that's sort of Mickey Mouse. And now what I'm going to do is start a new sketch, and I'm going to sketch on that face, and I'm going to view perpendicular. And now what I'm going to do in the sketcher is use convert entities. Convert entities says take features, geometry, in my sketch plane and turn them into actual sketch elements. So I'm going to take that circle. Let's see, convert entities. Looks like I missed it. Okay, am I in the sketcher? This does not. Okay, I guess I didn't actually go into the sketcher. There's my sketch plane. Now I'm in the sketcher. Convert entities. I will select on the circle and accept it, and it turns black, and maybe a little bit hard to see that it turned black, but it did. And now I'm going to accept that one, and let me go convert entities for this arc. I've selected it, and it now moves into my sketch, and now I can use this arc as if I had actually created the arc inside of the sketch. Same thing is true of this circle. They don't show up visually very well, so let's look at something very similar to convert entities called offset entities. Actually, let's see what's under here. Intersection curve, we're not going to deal with that. Offset entities says take existing geometry that's not yet in my sketch, okay, and offset it by a certain distance. And if I were to click on this edge, it creates a line for me. And if I were to click on this edge, it adds another line and it joins them for me. And if I were to click on this circle, they are intersecting, and so it didn't like that, but it did give me these two edges. Let me Control Z to delete them. Let's go with that again, and I want to show you a little bit more. Convert energies, click on this face. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean convert entities. Offset entities, click on this face, and see how it gives me the entire offset boundary of this face. Distance of 0.1 inches, let's go with 0.25 inches. Now at some point things will get a little bit weird going around this curve. So if I tried to go 2 inches, I'm not at all confident what'll happen. It didn't do it. Let's try 1 inch. It did it. 1.5 or 1.25. Let's get bigger. It's doing it, but at some point this circle's going to cause trouble. So let's go with 0.25 inches, and I will accept that geometry. And so I took existing geometry that was not yet in my sketch, and I made it a part of my sketch. If I wish, I can go to Offset Entities and click on the surface again. It's offering to give me the same thing, except I want to reverse the direction. And let's see what a 0.1 gives me. Okay, and you can see that it is now giving me offset entities inside this perimeter. I will go ahead and select that, and if I want, I could select individual faces to give me the offset. And so maybe I want to select that arc and just offset it inward by a distance of 0.1 and accept that. And so the offset entities is a very, very powerful tool for using existing geometry and bringing it into the next sketch for very, very quick use. Okay, my sketch is actually now very busy, so what I'm going to do is X out of this sketch before I move on to mirror entities, and I'm going to actually delete the boss extrude. Yes. And delete its sketch. Yes. And create a brand new sketch. So I'm going to sketch on the front plane, and we'll center things up. And now what I'm going to do is create a center line, because they are very handy. And that center line will start below the origin and extend above the origin. And now I'm going to create a line and a line and a line and a line. You know what? Somehow I think I skipped fillet earlier. So if I did, we're going to do a fillet in this sketch between that line and that line. And I want a fillet bigger than that. I want a fillet of 0.3 inches. And we'll continue on between these lines and those lines. And I will accept that fillet. And then I'm going to do a tangent arc to this end and create that arc. And then I'm going to draw another line to here. That's fine, and continue it to there and close it, and then fillet this, and I'm just sketching some stuff that I will eventually mirror. Okay, so there is my geometry, and I'd like to have another copy of it mirrored on the other side of this line. I will accept the sketch fillets. I will just select all of that geometry, and I will say mirror entities. I have to tell it what line to mirror about. I want it to mirror about there, and I accept that. And now this is a copy of that with all of the constraints, including an awful lot of symmetry constraints, which means if I grab the original and move things, the mirrored copy responds exactly the same way. And so we'll move some things around a bit, grab that point and drag it a bit, and you can see how the mirror behaves. Now if I were to wipe out these symmetry constraints, see if I can select them all at once. They're all sort of located together. Looks like it didn't allow me to do that. Try that one more time. Nope, it appears that these constraints don't highlight. I could get rid of them, but I'm not going to. So that would be a mirrored copy Control Z. Let's get rid of that one, that mirrored copy, and I've made a bunch of changes. Okay, and let's see, what else do we have that we haven't looked at? I thought there, okay, if I just want to copy an object, highlight it, Control C. I'll just come over to this neighborhood and Control V, and I've just pasted a copy over there. Let's zoom in so we can see everything. I can then grab this copy, change it. I should be able to move it around. Let's see, where is Move Entities? Okay, and I will select all of those. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let me Control Z out of that. And so what I'm going to do first is select them all, and then go with the Move Entities. And it wants to know my starting point for the moving. And so I'm going to call the center of that circle my starting point. And so now I'm going to move that starting point to there. Once I move that one, if I wish, okay, I can just continue moving it around. Or I could do an offset XYZ, a variety of things, but I've just grabbed that object and moved it. I'm going to accept that. Let's see, what else? Okay, a linear sketch pattern. And so I probably, to do this well, will need another center line or something to indicate the direction of the sketch pattern. Center line, I'm going to attach it to the origin, and I'm going to drag off at an angle. And let's zoom to make that fit a little bit better. Okay, I've paused for a moment to look at the linear sketch pattern, and in the end I thought it was easier to create this shape very quickly off screen, and now I'll show you the sketch pattern by choosing to sketch on that surface. We'll view perpendicular, and first thing I'll do, I'll create a rectangle, just a small rectangle, and there's the pattern that I would like to do a linear pattern on, or that's the shape I'd like to do a linear pattern on. I'm going to select it and click on linear sketch pattern, and it assumes, and let me offset this thing about an inch, and it assumes only 2 copies. Let's create 4, and it's assuming a pattern direction, which is the x-axis, and I could flip it if that's what I wanted. But I'm going to go right click and clear this section out and replace it with this edge of this part. And so now I can use this edge of this part to dimension the pattern in direction 1, or to control the pattern in direction 1. If I click on direction 2, it's using the y-axis. It has no spacing. Let's see. I want to create multiple copies. Let's go with 3 copies in the y direction with a spacing, and let's see what a 0.5 looks like. That does get them separated, and so one of my edges is controlling the first direction, and my y direction is controlling the other directions, and I have created that linear pattern. And now, to what extent do they change with the original? If I change the size of the original, you can see I'm getting a change in the size and shape of every one of them in the pattern. So that would be a linear pattern. I would need to set up properly to do a circular pattern, and so I will do that in just a second. Okay, so I just cleaned this sketch up. We are still in the sketcher. Let's look at doing a circular pattern. And what I'm going to do is just create a point right there to have something to circle about. And with that point, I'm then going to create just any shape I like, but I'm going to create a rectangle whose top is aligned with that point. There's my rectangle. I'm going to drag and select that rectangle and click on circular sketch pattern, and for some reason it assumes I want to circle about that point. Well, I don't, so I'm going to clear that selection and instead click on this point. And now it presumes I'm going to circle about that point, and I'm going to, instead of creating 4, let's create 12 of them, all equally spaced. Now they go outside of this part, and so interesting things would happen if I did an extrude with this, but I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to go make the master, I'm going to go make the master copy a bit smaller, and it makes them all smaller. And so now I can take this circular pattern, accept this sketch, and I could either do, let's go do a cut with that. Let's do an extruded cut, and those will go through the parts. Let's do a through all and see what it looks like. And so I've cut these notches out with a pattern embedded in the sketch. Obviously I could have done one notch in the sketch and then use the circular pattern at the feature level, and I don't know which is better. I think in general it's probably better at the feature level to do it, but there was the circular sketch pattern. Let's get rid of the cut extrude. I'm going to delete that, yes, but I'll keep the sketch that was associated with it and edit it and snap perpendicular to it and select everything and delete, yes, yes, sorry, yes to all. So that's gone. Let's look at what else we might want to play with. Under move entities, we have move, we have copy, we have rotate, we have scale. So let's go play with some of those. And so I'm going to create this slot. There's a slot, escape. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go with scale entities. And that says, what do I want to scale? I want to scale the slot. What do I want to scale about? I'm going to scale about this point on the slot, and I'm going to scale it by a factor of 2. And you can see that here's my original slot. My selected point did not move on my new copy, but everything else moved when I made the copy. And if I accept this as is, it'll simply take my original geometry and make it bigger. If I say copy, then it will leave me with both the copy and the original. And now let's look at the connections between the two. If I drag the original longer, it appears that my connection on length is broken. It does appear that there is some connection on rotation and other things. I'm going to Control Z out of that, and so that was a scale. Let's look at what else we have, and I'm going to Control Z until the copy or the scaled version is gone, and select this one. And let's take a look at rotate entities. Okay, center of rotation. I'm going to rotate about this center this time. Okay, so the rotation point is defined, and I want to rotate this 32 degrees, and you can see that it has been rotated, and I accept it, and what I'm left with is the new version rotated. Okay, I'm sure there's more to the rotate command, but that's probably enough to show. We will select this one, and under move entities we have copy entities. Okay, I'm going to copy the slot, and it's going to say from one location to another location with a base point. Let's use the middle, and so I'm going to copy from there to there and to there and to there, and just wherever I want to place copies of this thing, I have done so, and I've created several copies. Control Z out of each of those, select this. Let's see what we haven't played with yet. stretch is going to be like a scale, but it's going to stretch in one direction only. And so the base is defined, stretch from and to. Let's see what this gives us. Okay, I paused for a second and realized I was working with an entity that just didn't want to stretch. And so I've created a new stretch with just a new sketch with just a little bit of complication on here. And so what I'm going to do is drag and select so that I get these three lines and that circle. And now I'm going to select stretch entities, and I can grab any point on here that I might wish, grab it, and oops, why didn't, let's see, that worked last time, hang on a second. So we'll do it again, select them and stretch entities. Oh, it's because I've got the XY clicked from last time. Let me do the from to first of all, and I can sketch from there and drag it to there, and I've stretched those entities, or I'll select them again and do a move entity, stretch entities, and using the XY I would like to stretch, let's say 0.75 in the X, and you can see the effect that that has. Now stretching that 0.25 in the Y has meaning. It gets a little bit weird, and so I'm going to turn the Y stretching off and just go with the X stretching and accept that. And I guess I've accepted my sketch. I will accept that. Okay, the final thing that I want to show you relates again to design intent, and it involves the idea of using equations when we do dimensions. And so I'm going to do something. I'm going to smart dimension this edge to there and accept it. And then I'm going to smart dimension this edge and pull it on out. And when I click here, rather than accept it, I'm going to say equals that dimension and accept it. Now those two dimensions are equal to each other, but my sketch got a little bit weird. Notice the summation sign in front of there means this is an equation driven dimension, and I didn't mean that at all. What I really meant is that dimension divided by 2. So I can do math in this box. Okay, and I will accept that. And now if I change this to a dimension of 2, this equation recomputes, and I get a dimension of 1 out of this dimension. And so again, using equations. Now things are messing up because I didn't locate things very precisely. So well, I didn't intend to do the smart dimension. What I intended to do was grab that line, drag it down, and bring this hole back into the part. Okay, but within the sketch, I can relate one dimension to another using equations if I wish. I could dimension, say, this angle between those two lines, and I'm going to dimension the included angle, and let's call it 30 degrees, and then I'll move it where it looks a little bit prettier, and then I will dimension, smart dimension, these two, the angle between those two lines. Right now it's at 130 something, and I'm going to make it equal to, and I want to move this out of the way, let's try that again, equal to the 30 degrees times 4, which made it a 120. That has certainly changed the sketch. I'll accept that one. No, I missed it actually. Double click on it. Equals the 30 times 4. Enter. I didn't accept it last time. And so I get that angle keep it. Let's drag that back down just a little bit. And so if I change this one to a 25, then this angle automatically adapts itself and becomes 100. Why did I want to do that? I don't know, but I'm just showing you that we can use equations among the dimensions in a sketch. And let me make this one go back to about 35. And that was a little too much, as a matter of fact. Let's take it back to 30. 30 worked pretty good. Creates an interesting part. I'm going to accept this sketch. And now I'm going to use the sketch to do an extruded boss base. And I'll accept a dimension of 0.6 and 0.5 for now. I got too many decimal points. 0.5 for now, and accept that. But if I wish, if I double click on this feature and I see this dimension of 0.5 right there, I'll double click on it and say that I want that dimension to equal that dimension divided by 4. And so now the thickness of this extrude is governed by this dimension in the sketch. I will accept that temporarily, and now let's change this width to a 1.5. I'll accept it and regenerate the part, and I can see that my extrude dimension has now become a 0.375 because I have tied it to another dimension. So this can be incredibly powerful. Almost anything that we can enter as a number can be entered as an equation. Matter of fact, let me try this. Okay, I'm on dangerous territory now, but let me take this hole, and that's a feature all by itself. Let's see, can I do a linear pattern of this hole the way I created it? I don't actually think so. I would need to create the hole separately, so I'm going to do that. And so I'm going to do a sketch on this surface and start my sketch and view perpendicular and create a circle right there, and that will be the thing that I want to do a linear pattern on. I will first use that circle to do a cut, and I'm going to do a through all cut, and I sure believe it's right. So now I have that hole, and I'm going to do a linear pattern of the hole along the direction of this line, and right now I'm going to create 12 of them with a spacing of 3. 3 is too big. Spacing of 0.5. That's better. And 12 is too many. Let's create 10. And that seems about right. I'm going to accept that. Okay, and now what I want to do is double click on the pattern. Let's try this. Double click on the pattern, and I can see a spacing of 0.5 showing up, and I can see a count of 10. Well, what if I like the spacing roughly, and as this part right here gets bigger, I would like to keep the same spacing but add more holes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create on the click on the bottom of this rectangle. Okay, and so that is 5.123, and what I would like to have is holes spaced approximately 0.5 apart and the right number of holes to fit this part. And so I'm going to double click on my pattern again, and I'm going to change this 10 by double clicking on it, just say equals, and now I'm hoping I can double click on this surface and grab that and say divided by, let me double click on this pattern again, that spacing dimension of 0.5, and I will check that and accept it. Now, first of all, let's update and see if I get any change from the original equation. I don't. Let me change this dimension to a 9. Should make the part longer. I will have to do a regenerate and double click on the pattern, and I did not get what I wanted, so let's look at what went wrong here. There's my spacing of 0.5. Oh, it says I've got 18 is the number, but okay, here's what I didn't do properly. There are a whole bunch of these, but I didn't fix this circle to stay fixed from the left-hand edge. I didn't get my design intent, so this is absolutely wonderful. So I need to go fix my circle by finding the feature, and I'm going to edit the sketch, and now I'm going to dimension the center of the circle to the edge of that part. I've got to click on Smart Dimension. I love this. Center of the circle to the edge of the part, and I would like to have a 0.3. Now this first one will always stay locked to the edge of the part, and I will accept my sketch change, and I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 of those holes because I've made the part longer. And if I double click, oops, I'm in the wrong place right now. Double click, nope. What's the deal? What am I in right now that's not going to allow my double click? Okay, I double click there, and I'm going to change that 9 to a 12. And do a rebuild. Part got longer, and this edge stays filled with holes of the right size. And if I double click on the pattern, double click on the pattern, double click on the pattern over there, don't know why that's not working, I see that I now have 24 holes with a spacing of 0.5. What if I want to change the spacing dimension? Double click on it. Let's go with a 0.75 and accept that and regenerate and zoom out, and I can see that my edge is full of holes with a larger spacing. Double click on the pattern, and I can see that I've got 16 holes now. It reduced the number of holes based on my equation, which was the number of holes is the length of the edge divided by my spacing size. I'm going to restore the original value and bail out of that. And so I've made a fairly powerful equation-based relationship between the number of holes, the spacing of holes, and the length of the holes. The number is what will vary. The spacing I can set, and the overall length I can set. And so we'll go back to that first boss extrude and change this back to a 6 and do a regenerate, and the number of holes has adapted itself to give me holes of the same spacing but not too many or too few holes. And I think that's everything I want to show in this video. It's gotten kind of long. My TAs will probably be able to do this in lecture faster than I did it.